How do humans form impressions, make assessments, and choices? In his international bestseller Thinking, Fast and Slow, renowned psychologist Daniel Kahneman unravels the mysteries of how our minds work. Synthesizing decades of research, Kahneman's tour de force examines the complex machinery in our heads that shapes thought and decisions. Kahneman reveals the interplay between two distinct systems that drive cognitive processes, the intuitive and emotional system 1, and the deliberate, logical system 2. While System 1 operates automatically with unbelievable capabilities, it is also prone to predictable errors and biases outside our awareness. System 2 can catch and override these if engaged, but often endorses the intuitive assessments from System 1 with little scrutiny. Thinking, Fast and Slow became an instant classic upon publication, profoundly influencing fields ranging from behavioral economics to medicine and public policy. By understanding the illusions and quirks infecting even basic judgments, Kahneman's insights help us master our thoughts and choices rather than become their prey. His engaging style makes accessible decades of profound research through a captivating exploration of the machinery powering how we think. Two systems of thinking. Kahneman proposes two systems that drive the way we think. System 1 operates automatically and quickly, with little or no effort and no sense of voluntary control. It is intuitive, associative, and governs simple everyday tasks. System 2 allocates attention to mental activities that require effort, including complex computations. It is deliberate, controlled, and governs complex tasks like filling out a tax form. Errors of intuitive thought are often attributed to overconfidence in System 1. System 2 can catch these errors, but often endorses or fails to check intuitive judgments made by System 1. System 2 has a maximum capacity. System 2 has limited capacity and must be selective, allocating attention to more demanding cognitive tasks. If mental activities become too complex, too many tasks compete for attention, or cognitive capacity is diminished by stress, performance suffers. System 1 can generate impressions, feelings, and inclinations that determine what information is passed along for further processing by System 2. If overloaded, System 2 will endorse System 1's impressions without verifying them. System 1 is associative. The operations of System 1 are fast, automatic, effortless, associative, and difficult to control or modify. When presented with a stimulus, closely related associations quickly come to mind. These intuitive thoughts arise spontaneously without a sense of voluntary control. The responses of System 1 are shaped by lifetime experiences stored in memory. How we make judgments. We normally assess truth and causation by coherence and consistency rather than examining evidence. However, associative memory can generate a story that appears coherent but is false or biased, rather than provide an accurate judgment based on evidence. Biases of System 1. The marvels of intuitive thought come with flaws. System 1 constructs a richly detailed model of reality, then infuses it with associative memories, impressions, feelings, and preferences. Our thoughts and preferences skew to confirm existing beliefs through cognitive ease rather than accuracy. Here are some examples of the difficulty in allocating attention and mental fluency even when cognitive capacity is high. 1. Multitasking. When we try to multitask, dividing attention between multiple complex tasks, performance on all tasks suffers even for people with high capacity. The mind can only focus on one cognitively demanding task at a time. 2. Distractions. External distractions like noise, interruptions, or internal distractions like worrying about other things can overload cognitive capacity. Even if capacity is large, attention cannot be allocated properly. 3. Anxiety or stress. High levels of anxiety, stress, or fatigue can diminish the available cognitive capacity significantly, making it harder to allocate sufficient attention to demanding mental tasks. 4. Boredom. If a task is not stimulating enough, attention may wander even if excess capacity is available. We tend to allocate more attention to interesting or novel stimuli. 5. Cognitive deficits. Disorders like ADHD or depression can impair executive function and make it harder for System 2 to allocate attention properly regardless of overall capacity. The key point is that cognitive capacity alone does not determine mental performance. The ability to selectively allocate attention and exert mental effort are also crucial bottlenecks for System 2 activities. Stress, distractions, multitasking, and lack of motivation impair the allocation of attention needed for deliberate thinking. Heuristics and biases. Statistical mistakes. System 1 relies on heuristics, simple efficient rules and shortcuts, to form judgments and make decisions. This allows us to think quickly and navigate complex environments. However, heuristics can lead to predictable errors called biases. For example, we expect small samples to closely resemble large populations. However, sampling statistics inherently produce non-representative results due to randomness and variability. Our judgment ignores the laws of statistics, resulting in biases. Anchors. When making estimates, we start from an initial anchor value which then skews subsequent assessments. Different anchors can lead to widely different estimates which are biased toward the anchors. We fail to adjust sufficiently far from the anchors implanted in our mind. Availability bias. We overestimate the likelihood of vivid scenarios we can easily imagine or recall. Recent events or emotional salience also make some instances easier to recall than base rates and probabilities would indicate. Relying on availability leads to corresponding biases. Representativeness. Assessments of likelihood get skewed when relying on stereotypes rather than base rates. We ignore the laws of probability when judging representativeness. For example, describing someone as shy and withdrawn but with an eye for detail makes people rate them higher on likelihood of being a librarian than probability calculations would dictate. Overcoming the heuristics. While heuristics and resulting biases are common in System 1 thinking, System 2 can overcome them through learned rules and deliberate analysis. With vigilance, statistical knowledge, and an awareness of biases, we can override the intuitive heuristics of System 1. Hard work is required, however, to sustain engaged, effortful thinking. Overconfidence. Flaws in our understanding. Overconfidence arises when we believe we understand situations far better than we actually do. Our subjective confidence in judgments is often miscalibrated compared to objective accuracy. However, we maintain an illusion of understanding far beyond our actual grasp. For example, people were overconfident in their flawed intuitive answers to a quiz on logical reasoning. Training in the basic rules, however, led to people recognizing the correct answers as reasonable, showing they had little understanding of the principles involved initially. Formulas beat intuitions. In environments that require statistical predictions, formulas consistently beat human intuition. However, people stubbornly stay loyal to intuitive impressions and heuristics rather than formulas. Adopting evidence-based algorithms requires overcoming this stubborn intuition. The objective view. Evaluating scenarios from a distanced, objective view rather than an insider's intuitive perspective can overcome biases. Seeing situations as an observing outsider breaks the hold of impressionistic intuition. Adopting multiple perspectives, rather than just the natural insider view, improves calibration of judgments. Choices. Prospect theory. The classical economic model assumes rational choices maximizing utility. However, actual behavior shows that losses loom larger than gains relative to a reference point. The asymmetry between avoiding losses and acquiring gains is described by prospect theory developed by Kahneman and Tversky. Implications of prospect theory. Framing choices in terms of potential gains or losses triggers different responses. People take more risks to avoid even small losses than to realize even large gains. Organ donation rates are higher in opt-out rather than opt-in programs because the former avoids the perception of losses rather than foregoing gains. Variations on a theme of prospect theory. The asymmetry between losses and gains holds under various scenarios. The difference in sensitivity applies to actual losses versus goal shortfalls. Small probabilities also get overweight when making risky choices. People's choices vary greatly with the framing of options, violating the invariance principle of rational choice. Different representations of the same choice lead to systematically different preferences. Broad framing and global thinking. Combining multiple gains and losses into a broad frame provides a more rational basis for assessing value rather than narrowly focusing on each outcome. Segregating related outcomes causes inconsistent choices. Adopting a broad perspective overcomes narrow framing biases. Viewing utility and value globally rather than locally or incrementally also helps overcome the volatility of prospect theory. The stream of experiences is a more reliable gauge than placing disproportionate weight on each transient experience viewed in isolation. The two selves of happiness. The experiencing self lives in the moment, continuously updating feelings. The remembering self maintains beliefs and impressions about past experiences. Memories of experiences, not just how they felt originally, determine long-term happiness. The remembering self will focus more on memorable peaks and endings than duration. Experienced well-being versus life evaluations. Surveys suggest people believe happiness rises with income. However, beyond basic needs, experienced well-being does not track increased income. Life evaluations about status and success continue rising, but measures of emotional quality of life do not match those beliefs about the impact of higher income. Measuring experienced well-being paints a different view of prosperity's benefits. The focusing illusion. When focusing only on a specific factor, we exaggerate its expected impact on happiness. Our intuitive predictions get skewed by the focusing illusion that overstates the importance of that element. For example, the focusing illusion applies to the impact of income, children, and status. Expected satisfaction far exceeds the actually experienced well-being. Adaptation and the hedonic treadmill. We quickly adapt to changes in life circumstances. After initial changes in experienced well-being, we revert back toward a set range as we adjust to the new normal. Like a hedonic treadmill, increased happiness from a positive change levels off, while unhappiness fades at a new negative baseline. We fail to anticipate this adaptation, overestimating the durability of emotional impacts. Intensity matching. The intensity of emotions tends to match the sensory properties rather than importance of stimuli. Smaller but closer stimuli may provoke stronger reactions than major events that are distant or abstract. The availability heuristic leads intensity matching to substitute easier associative impressions for appropriate evaluations. Risk as feelings. While we expect rational choices about risk to align with value optimization, emotional reactions to risk often diverge from statistical expectations. Risk as feelings describes when emotional impressions drive behavior counter to calculated expectations. Vividness and salience amplify emotional reactions to unlikely threats despite contrary knowledge. The peak end rule. The remembering self judges past episodes based on salient peaks and how they culminate rather than duration or average intensity. Peak moments and the ending disproportionately shape recalled utility. Unpleasant experiences seem more acceptable in hindsight if intensity peaks earlier and ends on a relatively better note due to this mnemonic distortion. Kahneman's monumental work leaves us with a final reminder: while System 1 will continually conjure intuitive impressions, System 2 remains capable of doubt, skepticism, and open-minded analysis. His elucidation of the machinery powering how we think ultimately empowers our capacity for deliberative reason. By understanding the hidden flaws infecting judgments and choices, we gain the wisdom to nurture patience over presumption, evidence over impulse, and vigilance over vulnerability. With enlightened persistence, Kahneman shows we can overcome even the most subtle of biases hardwired into System 1's intuitions. And in that mastery of our own minds lies the potential for greater understanding, meaning, and fulfillment from the thoughts and decisions defining our days. For all the illusions that unconsciously skew beliefs and actions, Kahneman equips us with the insight to consciously create judicious change, one vigilant thought at a time.